Welcome to BullTV, where we are bullish on Collierville. I'm your host, David Pickler. BullTV is a monthly show that empowers, educates, and entertains while highlighting the citizens of Collierville who inspire and deliver solutions for a stronger community. BullTV is presented by Pickler Companies and is proudly produced by the students of Collierville High School. We invite you to watch our show at www.bulltv.show, thebullnetwork.com, and CHSTV19. New episodes air on the second Sunday of every month at 3 p.m. Central Time. On today's show, we sit down with Collierville's Police Chief, Dale Lane. We originally had this segment scheduled to film on the afternoon of September 23rd. But an unimaginable tragedy had struck our town that day, and we canceled, knowing Chief Lane had to be a leader and a messenger of hope for our community. Chief Lane was gracious enough to take time out of his busy schedule to sit down with us today and discuss public safety in Collierville through the lens of the events that unfolded on that tragic day, a day we will never forget. In the show, we will discuss Collierville's real-life heroes and how the Collierville Police Department is a shining example of service over self. Chief Lane will discuss the importance of training for our law enforcement officers, how communication played a vital role on September 23rd, and how staying focused through moments of suffering is a vital part of his job. Stay tuned for this inside look at the role of our Chief of Police and how Chief Dale Lane implements his leadership skills for the Collierville people and for the Collierville Police Department and the citizens of Collierville. Today, I am joined by Chief of Police Dale Lane. Chief Lane has over 34 years of public safety experience, 18 of which are in senior leadership positions in law enforcement, emergency management, and transportation. He holds a Master of Science in Operations Management from the University of Arkansas, a Bachelor of Science in Organizational Management from Crichton College, and an Associate of Applied Science in Criminal Justice from Southwest Tennessee Community College. He has been involved in the Sheriff's SWAT team, the Governor's Law Enforcement Counterterrorism Support Element, and also served as an associate member of the Joint Terrorism Task Force. He is a member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the Memphis Metropolitan Association of Chiefs of Police, and the FBI National Academy Associates. In 2019, Chief Lane was recognized as a certified safety executive through the World Safety Organization. Chief Lane, thank you for joining us on BullTV.
Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here.
Well, we're very excited to have you. We always try to begin our interviews, Chief Lane, with an opportunity for the guests to kind of introduce themselves to the audience and give you a little insight into who you are. And really about not only who you are, but also the values that you hold. In 3 words, who is Dale Lane?
I'm going to be an overachiever for you today.
Okay.
The first 3 would be follower of Christ. That's the most important thing in my life. I guess the second thing would be husband, father, grandfather. And then the third section would be happy, positive problem solver. So,
you are an overachiever.
There you go.
But each of those 3 groups are phenomenal. How old are your grandchildren?
Well, I have, the oldest is 4, and then I have grandbaby number 4 that will be here in January. So
wow.
Yeah, so they're all in between 4 and newborn.
That makes life exciting, doesn't it?
It does. It's a whole new area for sure.
I have a 6-year-old and a 21-month-old, and
oh, wow.
You never really understand love until the first time you see that grandchild.
That's right. I agree with that.
Well, great. Well, Chief Lane, again, we're so excited to have you. You have such an impressive resume, over 34 years in public safety. How did you first get involved in public safety?
Well, I think that probably my first recollection, I'm growing up, my father was friends with many law enforcement officers from Millington Police Department, Shelby County Sheriff's Office, Tennessee Highway Patrol, very close friends. And these were men of integrity, people that you could tell they loved their job serving people. And so they had a huge influence on me. And so I started looking that direction as I got older. And actually, it was after I got out of high school.
Wow. There's so many wonderful things that you've done, but the one that really jumped out at me was being a graduate of the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia, and also serving on the governor's law enforcement counterterrorism element. Tell us, our viewers, a little bit about your public safety background, some experiences, things that you really stand out for you.
Well, the FBI National Academy, that's a dream of pretty much every law enforcement commander in the country. I mean, less than 1% of all the law enforcement officers in the world will get an opportunity to go. It's the
less than 1%?
Right, and that's worldwide. And when we're fortunate here at CPD, we actually have three other graduates here at CPD, but it's a very hard thing to get into. But it is such a wonderful experience. You spend 3 months at Quantico, and my class had 28 countries represented, 300, right at 300 officers, and so you get a perspective from all over the world. And it's just something that I'm very thankful for. I still, even after this incident last week, I had my roommate from Indiana was texting me about seeing me on TV there. And so just it's all about the connections. You get the latest and greatest. The FBI's crime lab's there, their SRT team, which is their version of SWAT's there. And so I've got the utmost respect for the FBI, and it was a great opportunity.
Tell me a little bit about your experience with the governor's counterterrorism group.
Well, after 9/11, the state stood up a Homeland Security Division, and simultaneously what was happening, you had the National Department of Homeland Security was identifying critical infrastructure all across the country. And so the Tennessee Department of Homeland Security created the counterterrorism support element to train officers to come in and do threat and vulnerability assessments on key assets and critical infrastructure. And back then, Tennessee, the original list that came out, there were 21 sites in Tennessee, and 18 of them were in Shelby County. And so it was, so myself, another officer from Shelby County Sheriff's Office is where I came from. We attended, as well as 2 from the Memphis Police Department, and then we came back and trained our SWAT teams, and then we began to do vulnerability assessments on critical infrastructure here in the county.
Wow. Well, again, it's really all about being prepared.
That's right.
And so, well, thank you for that. So what did you do specifically to prepare yourself to become the chief of police here in Collierville?
Well, I looked out there, and really, I would love to tell you that I had this wonderful plan when I was really young, and I followed it, but I really didn't. But I made sergeant in 1998, and I began to think about retirement, which this is 9 years into the job, so I had a long way to go. But I was watching senior officers that were leaving, and then I thought a lot of them were going to other places to be chief after they retired, and I thought, what made them successful? What were those things in their background? Then I started looking at positions around the country and what were the requirements, and most of them said bachelor's degree, prefer a master's, and the very next thing was graduate of the FBI National Academy. So that became my priority list over the next 10 years or so. And so I controlled the things I could control, and going back to school and finishing that up and get my master's. And then I prayed for the opportunity to get to go to the FBI Academy, and that was a blessing. I was able to do that. And so I look at it this way. There's several things that you can do. Those I was doing those things that were on the peripheral, and I was very proud at that point, probably 2009 or 10. I thought, man, I've done all these things. I've checked the boxes. And there was a friend of the family. He's actually related to my wife. His name is Richard Myers. Richard was, he's been the chief of police of Colorado Springs. He's one of these problem solvers. The guys where there's a issue, he goes in. He was the chief that came in after the, at the Sanford Police Department when they had the shooting there and the unrest. So I decided I'm going to reach out to him, and I said, I'm going to show him my resume. And I was thinking I'm going to get back the kudos. Well, I sent it to him, and he said, Dale, you're a specialist, and that's good. You're heavy on special operations, SWAT, but you need something more administrative. You need to see if you can get something, whether or not, something in the mayor's office is what he said. So, I had that in the back of my mind, and I thought I had very little interest to do that. But then 2014, Mayor Luttrell, who used to be our sheriff, his team contacted me and asked me would I be interested in becoming the director of Shelby County Homeland Security Emergency Management, which was something I was very passionate about and my background I had. And so that experience, I left the sheriff's office in 2014 and spent 4 years at Homeland Security Emergency Management, and that gave me an opportunity to work with elected officials. I was the emergency manager for the entire county, and so I was constantly working with state officials, federal officials, and so those things really helped prepare me. And then, I got to see a side of outside of operations that were a little bit more administrative and dealing with our elected bodies, and so that's a unique position in itself.
You said three things I really want to point out. I think are really good lessons for anyone to learn.
Okay.
Number one is the fact that you have friends who are willing to be honest with you,
right,
and to share an objective assessment. And then it seems like you all also found people who could help you connect. Like with Mayor Luttrell. I mean, Mark is such an amazing man. One of the greatest men. And of course, third, never underestimate the power of prayer.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You bring, an example, and I know we're going to get a little bit later to talk about some of the things that occurred last week, but there were people coming to help. There were resources that were coming before we asked. And so, a lot of that. So I agree with you. I think you put the right people, and when you can carry out your duties with passion, and I've been blessed, man, for 34 years. I love my job. I don't love every day of my job.
Yeah.
I haven't, but I love my job overall. I love to serve. I love to be able to help people. And when you carry out when you're passionate about it and people see the passion, sometimes that'll open the doors for you. Mayor Luttrell was, if you remember, he came into the sheriff's office and it was a lot of turmoil going on. And he brought stability. He brought a different atmosphere. And he was one that had a big influence on me completing my education, because for the first time in my career, there was someone in a position of authority who made having a college degree a priority. And he let everybody know that was something that was, I don't want to say an expectation, but you could tell he valued that.
That's fantastic. Well, let's move to the big issue.
Okay.
As we approach the questions that are relating to last week, September 23rd, first of all, before we go any further, I just want to thank you and each and every first responder, police, fire, medical, for everything that you did. Your quick response, the calm and steady way that y'all handled things, your courage, on behalf of myself, but everyone in this wonderful community, thank you very much for what you and your team did. I know you're the kind of person you're going to deflect immediately to other people, but thank you for your leadership and thank you for what you did for our community.
Well, thank you for saying that. It's I tell people all the time that, and that's one thing that is so unique about this community is I told somebody the first week I was here, I walked into the Silver Caboose, and you would have thought Elvis was in the building, and it wasn't me. It was the uniform, and the people love and respect the police department, and our officers, they know that, and we do everything we can to build on those relationships. And I can tell you that day, it's an honor to serve in this police department every day, but we knew that day, here's a situation you trained for, and now it's the real deal. And I was very thankful for my team. I was thankful for their heart. They knew going into that building, we could be facing some overwhelming circumstances, and they didn't hesitate. And not only them, the Collierville Fire Department. I mean, this is a situation where we trained June the 4th at this high school. We trained on active shooter, and the fire was integrated into that training with us. This was multiple law enforcement agencies. We were the host, and we were able to coach, make mistakes in the training environment, and and it served us well last Thursday.
Well, as chief of police, you really have to keep that cool head, at all times, even during times of great chaos, and great sadness. When you think back at 1:30 p.m. on September 23rd, what was going through your mind? How were you able to maintain that calm, that focus as the events unfolded? And how were you able to handle the communication with the other first responders here and throughout the Mid-South?
Well, anytime you have a situation like that, communication is always going to be an issue. As far as what were we thinking at the beginning, we have been trained over and over through the years. It doesn't matter your title. It doesn't matter what position you're in, that if there's an active shooter, you go. And what I think, what I've thought about in this, and we've talked about this before, is that you have to make the decision on whether or not you're going to go in before you get there. That's already settled in your mind. And I looked at myself, and I know every other officer there, we view that as that could be our wife. And in many cases, there could have been. I don't know at this point that we had any family members in there. But that's the way people look at it. So our first priority was to stop the shooting. And that's what we were focused on. Once the scene was stabilized, then it was making sure that we got medical attention to those that needed it. From there, it was managing the largest crime scene I've ever seen in my life. And the unique thing about that is you talk about the communication with other agencies. That day, I will never know exactly the number of people that were on that lot, but people came from everywhere. We had Memphis Police, Germantown, you had Shelby County Sheriff's Office, ATF, FBI, so they were coming. Germantown, our sister city right over here, we had most of our resources tied up on that scene at that moment. They rolled a whole shift into Collierville and was, being there for us until we could, start releasing our officers. You had the Sheriff's Office Bomb Squad, Memphis Bomb Squad that helped us check the suspect's vehicle and do some other things. But the FBI they were my second call. I said, I need help with this crime scene. And within a matter of minutes, we had the FBI's evidence response team here. So that doesn't happen by chance. And those things that we talked about 9/11 and the governor's counterterrorism support element, back then, that's one of the things that came out of 9/11 is the cooperation. And we began at that time working together, not only within law enforcement, but we began to cross over and work together across discipline. And so I know I'm ashamed to say this, but before 9/11, what I knew about firemen is that they had clean bathrooms and they were really good cooks, right? We didn't do a lot of integration on scenes. We did our thing and they did their thing. But now I can't tell you how comforting it was for me when we began to establish our unified command. And I look out there and I have Chief Buddy Billings that's got 40 plus years experience in handling the metal. And standing right beside him is John Selberg, the fire chief at Germantown, who is the leader of Tennessee Task Force 1. That's buttoned up. You don't have to worry about that part of the operation. And then I turn around, I see Assistant Chief Rodney Bright from Germantown who's there. Assistant Chief Sam Hines from the Memphis Police Department. All of these people that we've had. I had a Collierville resident, Chief Inspector Derek Mills was here, and the sheriff would have been here, but he was out of town, and so. But he was on the other end of that call that I made, and he got us what we needed like that.
I had the honor of going through Leadership Germantown years ago with Richard Hall.
Yes.
The great police chief over in Germantown, and sort of know Rodney very, very well. And again, great people, and all coming together, for a same purpose, to make sure that the people are taken care of, the situation is
helping
taken care
neighbors.
of. I want to talk a little further about what you discussed a moment ago, and that was the training. training for situations like what happened on September 23rd, as you said, is incredibly important. As you talked about, Collierville's first responders did that active shooter training here back in June. Talk a little bit about the training that your people go through and how that June training really was able to allow y'all to address the situation in the most effective and efficient manner possible.
Well, I think that two things that I would highlight about this is that, one, police officers are trained, you go to the threat until it's eliminated. And that means either they give up, commit suicide, or unfortunately if we have to shoot somebody, but it's to stop any other violence. So that's our primary focus at that point. That training that we did, that's what would happen. And it goes against your nature when people are hurt to keep going towards a threat and not be able to stop and help. Now, most people were still stopping and helping, but we went, the threat was eliminated. But the big thing here is that in that training environment, and if you study these incidents around the country, many times one of the gaps in the response is getting medical attention to the victims quickly. And you've even seen in some cases where police officers were loading victims into police cars and taking them because the fire department, traditionally their response has been, we don't come in until the scene is safe.
Oh.
And so in this case, you can never say that it's ultimately secure enough to fit that old category. Now, 4 years ago, that paradigm began to shift. And Chief Billings had enough forethought 3 years ago to buy ballistic helmets, vest for his team, and then set up a operating philosophy that says we're going to go. And so we began to train that way, and we trained that way. The training was originally set for December during the Christmas break, and because of COVID, we had the spike in COVID, we had to postpone it till June, which now we see that served us much better than being 6 months away. But on that day, I've been doing this for 34 years. And I've never, when I was SWAT commander, I had a program with Shelby County Fire where we had paramedics go through SWAT school. Mm-hmm. And then they were given handguns just for self-protection. They had gear, but they were part of our team, part of our stack, if you will. In my entire career, I've never seen firemen and paramedics that show up on a fire truck or an ambulance, jump out, put gear on, and start going in with us. And that says two things. One, they're very brave men and women. Two, they trust the police officers to take care of them. And so I'm very thankful that, I was a little bit, it's you can hear it, see it in training, but there's no see it in the real deal. It's amazing.
Wow. Chief Lane, our viewers know how valuable safety is in our community.
Sure.
And it's really one of the driving factors that people choose to live in this great community. Will you talk a little bit about what goes into serving as an officer? What are the skill sets that you're looking for in your officers? And how do they play a role in reacting to extreme circumstances to really create that safe community?
We have a very extensive screening process that you go through to even get to the place where you start to get interviewed. But once you make it to that interview, one, you have to be able to convince 4 command staff members that they're, I don't want to say worthy, but that they're up to par to be members of the Collierville Police Department and to serve this great community. If they get that stamp of approval, then they come to me. And I want to know, are you a good citizen first? I want to know, are you a good person first? Talk to me. I want you to know what my philosophy is. And people talk community policing all day long. I promise you, if you ask every chief in the United States, they're going to tell you they do community policing. Mm-hmm. But it means so many different things to so many different people. For us, we don't have community policing officers. We don't have a crime prevention unit over here that does it. We are all community policing officers, from our clerks that work, our jail staff, and really what that comes down to is 2 things, 2 priorities. You have a problem-solving attitude. Means you give every person in every situation your absolute very best. Mm-hmm. And the second is that you make partnership building a priority. We get lots of questions, things that are not our job. And what I've interviewed every Collierville Police Department. When I walked in, every police officer was interviewed. And I told them the phrase, "It's not my job," should never come out of your mouth. We're here to serve people. And then I also tell them, if you want to love your job after 34 years, you make it about the people. Make it about the people you serve. Don't make it about you. If you make it about you, you're going to get disgruntled. You're going to get bitter. But if you can remember that every day you have an opportunity to make a difference for somebody, you can lay your head down at night and sleep well because you have purpose. And so we look for good people. Obviously, I want the very best. And right now, I think there's a lot of factors. That recruiting in law enforcement in general is really tough right now. But right now, we're pulling the best and brightest from these other departments. And so people want to be a part of our team, and I'm thankful for that.
I've been waiting for several days to ask this question.
Okay.
Because of the impact you made on me when I was watching the coverage last week. You talked about it already. Communication, such a vital part of the job.
Right.
And I will tell you, me personally, but I think everyone in our community was so impressed with how you handled the media and representing our town. For many, Chief Lane, you were the face of Collierville in the wake of the horrible things that happened and we experienced. Tell me a little bit about your preparation, your media training, and how you were able to go about communicating such vital information, not only to Colliervillians, but also to so many Americans across the country who watch this broadcast.
I think probably, I've had experience in the past, but I think probably the person that had the most influence on me when it comes to dealing with the media is a man named Steve Schuler. Steve Schuler was the public information officer for the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. Then he went to the mayor's office when Mayor Luttrell went in. And if you know Steve, Steve doesn't tell anybody no about anything. He is Mr. Helper. Mm-hmm. But I watched how Steve, the influence that he had with the media, and we talked, and many times I called it wargaming, where we would go through and he would play the role of a reporter, and then what I learned from him, Steve would say, Dale, you can tell your story, or you can let them tell it. Mm-hmm. And so, and I believe that, and I respect the media. I do. I know they have a job to do, and so there's some things, just like last week, I would love to be able to push everything out and let everybody know exactly what happened, but we're not there yet. And so we can't compromise our investigation moving forward. But I think our role is in the leadership in the police department and every police officer is not just to keep crime down, but it's also to reduce fear. And if I've seen press conferences, you've seen press conferences that for whatever reason, people are out there and the information is not helping, but you're creating fear. And that's what I didn't want to do. I wanted to bring, hopefully, some stability to the situation, bring hope. Hope is it's such a powerful tool. And when you can highlight, when you can highlight the good things that you saw in people, and like the people that were the victims in the inside that we were bringing out, many of them wanted to stop and help people. When you can talk about those things, that gives people hope. And, I never want to create fear for anybody. I want them to be confident in us, that we're doing our very best. I would have loved to have been able to prevent what happened the other day. But once it did, it was our job to mitigate the impacts of it.
Well, you did a fantastic job.
Well, thank
you. As you were talking, I was thinking about examples of when that's not been done. And I was kind of harking back to when President Reagan was shot, and Alexander Haig had his infamous moment where he said, "I'm in charge." And not exactly the message that people needed to hear at that time. And that certainly was not what you did. With events like what, we witnessed and what you witnessed last week, there's undeniable shock and trauma that goes on with that. Not only for the Kroger employees and the customers who were there, but also for your officers. You talked about the largest crime scene that you'd ever experienced. Because for so many, it's something that they never thought they would ever face, especially in a town like Collierville. What support has been made available and will be made available for the trauma for both the employees, the customers, your officers, as we go forward and help them as they deal with what happened last week?
Well, for us, after we get things calmed down and back to some sense of normalcy, which probably happened about Saturday. We went back. That's when we start defusings, which is part of a critical stress debriefing process for our officers. And basically, it's a quick thing to talk about things they've experienced. The big thing will be a critical stress debriefing where officers that's been involved in similar incidents from around the state will come in. They'll be able to talk to them about some of the physical things that they may experience over the next few days. Mm-hmm. I know for me, I got in Thursday night. I couldn't sleep. I got home probably about 11 o'clock, and I sat there in my chair till 1 o'clock and just could not wind down. I went to bed, and I think I finally fell asleep at 3, got back up at 4:15. So it's that understanding why your body's doing what it is. Also, we graduated 9 chaplains about a month ago from our first chaplains academy.
Oh, wow.
Those chaplains we started having them go to our roll calls and be available for our officers. The Billy Graham Rapid Crisis Intervention team that goes to these events all over the country, they set up shop at First Baptist Church. They also came to roll calls. The sheriff's chaplains did as well. Anybody that was willing to bring a service, encouragement, I wanted them to see our officers and our officers to see them. And so Kroger, as far as their employees go, they're working with Shelby County Victims Assistance Program, and that's the numbers that we're getting out for people that are outside. Kroger employees have the ability to also go to their employee assistance programs, and so there's going to be much more information coming out for people in the community that's dealing with some of this as well. So there'll be some resources available.
Wow, what an amazing experience that you've all been through, and we all as a community. When you think about what's happened over the past several days, what are you most proud of when you think about the work of the Collierville Police Department?
Well, I really look at it as a whole community approach, and that's how we go into public safety in general. It's all of us working together. It's not the police and the community. It's all of us doing public safety. So what I'm proud of is I've probably said it 10 times here. I'm proud of our officers that there was no hesitation as they did what they were trained to do. They integrated with fire. They were able to work with outside partners that were coming in. I'm proud of every one of those people that were inside of that Kroger store. It was obvious to me when I went in, when we were pulling people out of coolers, out of closets, locked offices, between pallets of food. They had been trained in run, hide, fight, or a version of that. Mm-hmm. They didn't stand around and wait and give up. They did everything they could to survive and give us time to get there. And so I'm proud of them. That was a contributing factor. I'm proud of the firefighters who were, that's one thing to see it on the TV. It's another thing when there's a guy potentially in that building somewhere with something that could hurt you really bad. And they chose to go and help their neighbor. And so I'm proud of that. I'm thankful. When I came out of that building and I looked across that parking lot, and over the next 20 minutes, 20 officers became 40 officers, and then it became 100 officers. And before you know it, that whole Kroger parking lot was full of police officers from Fayette County, Germantown. I mean, you name a city, and we had people there that were helping us. And so our philosophy too is that if one of our neighboring agencies needs us and we can help, and we're going to help them because we saw what they did for us.
Well, I think as we kind of close this part of our conversation, thinking back on the events of the past week, then what message of hope would you like to convey to our community and to our viewers?
Well, don't focus on the negative, focus on the good. I tell you, I had an amazing experience yesterday. I had a young man named Connor who came in to see me. Connor had signed up to be part of the Adopt-A-Cop program, which is people that are willing to be prayer partners and pray for police. And so he came in, and I had one of the clerks call me and say, there's a young man down here that has a letter for you. And so I went down there, and there's an 11-year-old boy that's standing there with an envelope. And he told me he was my prayer partner and that he had seen me on TV. And he wanted me to know that, he was praying. And I immediately began to try to encourage him. And I would say, Connor, I'm so thankful for you, man. You continue to pray because I need it. And I'll pray for you. And he didn't hesitate. He looked me in the eye and he said, can I pray for you right now? Yes, let's do it. And so right there in the lobby of the police department, he prayed for me.
Wow.
And I'm trying to hold it together, right? I mean, I'm an emotional guy anyway. And so, but when I see this young man's heart, and so I take his letter and I go back up and I began to, when I started reading his handwritten note, and I mean, he's doing everything he can to encourage me. He's talking, I know the big shooting was scary, but God was with you. And I mean,
wow.
I'm getting teared up now. But he gave a verse, and it's one of my favorite verses in the Bible, Joshua 1:9. And so, I mean, I after I cried for 15 minutes, I was just so overwhelmed at hope. Here's a young man who's pointing to a source of hope. And I thought, man, I need to get this out. Other people need to see this. And so I searched, I got our team working, get me their numbers. And so I run down, his dad was named Dan. Dan was the one that brought him in. And I called him and I said, man, you have one amazing little boy. And I said, is there any way that you would allow us to put this on our social media pages? And he said, yes. And we put that thing out there, and I mean, the last time I checked, which was 10 hours ago, it had been liked 1,800 times, shared almost 400. And that was so representative of Collierville. I mean, neighbors helping neighbors. So that's what I would say. Be an encourager. Don't focus on the negative, because we have so much to be blessed about. I hate this incident occurred, but if we allow it to change us, then they win. But I know this community, and I said it in one of those press conferences, this is one of the most resilient communities. And I don't say it because I don't know. I watched when we had our 2 officers that were injured back in January, how this community just wrapped their arms around us, wrapped their arms around them, and really helped us. And it wasn't critiquing them on what they did or anything else. It was, how can we help? And they began to help. And that's what Connor was about.
On a broader scale, Chief,
Okay.
What would you say is your leadership philosophy, and how does that help you as you guide and lead the Collierville Police Department?
I guess if you narrowed it down to one of those, management, you would say servant leadership and the ability to listen. Now, there's all different types of leadership, and different situations require you to do different things. So servant leadership, situational leadership, you obviously during a crisis, you don't want to form a committee and get everybody's opinion. You got to make decisions and move. But I think you should model what you expect. If you want people to be happy, positive problem solvers, you better be a happy, positive problem solver. And then set high expectations and a vision that they can believe in. And, that's the thing. I told them I love my time at the sheriff's office. I love our partners at Germantown, but I want CP to be the absolute very best. And I want them to want to be the best. And that comes with attitude first.
Talk a little bit about, if you would, about CPD's public safety strategies.
Well, one, there's several pieces of that. I've talked about community policing because it has to be a whole community approach. The next thing would be we leverage technology. I mean, that's a huge part of what we do. An example of our technology is our license plate reader cameras. Anywhere you come into Collierville, you're going to pass you may not see it or notice it, but you're going to pass a camera. And what happens is when you come by that camera reads the license plate, it checks it to see if the registered owner's wanted, if the car's stolen. And usually what we're finding is that people that are committing crime here, often they come in stolen vehicles, they're wanted parties or something. And what that does, that technology gives us an early warning capability. So I'm a firm believer in technology. It's a force multiplier for us. The second thing that we do is data smart policing. And so basically what we do is analyze crime reports. We're looking at days of the week, times of day, types of crimes being committed, to see if we can identify, those trends and hotspots so that we can prevent crime from occurring. I'm a huge believer in sharing information across jurisdictions. We work closely with our partners, and those LPR cameras that I talked to you about. They're not only good for the early warning capability, but the investigation that follows. If we have crime here, we can track where that vehicle has been across jurisdiction, not just the cameras that we have control of here in Collierville, but across every jurisdiction. We share our information, and we work together because, Germantown's car burglars are probably our car burglars, right? And so we share that information. So it's all about partnering with our neighborhoods, utilizing our leverage, and using data smart policing to guide our decision making so that we're effectively deploying our resources.
You may have talked about this a little bit already, but describe data-driven policing and how does CPD use it to allocate your resources?
An example I'll give you, I've talked about crime being committed. Another area that we look at is identifying high crash locations with it. Okay, if we know we have our top 5 crash locations, what are those causative factors? What's driving it? And then we deploy resources to prevent it. And I know it's not going to shock you, but probably our top 5 normally are going to be on Poplar. And
Doesn't shock.
And a lot of times the cause is distracted driving. And so I don't know if you've seen our motorcycle unit, but they're very good at that. That's new. They've been out since April. They have become superstars in the town. Kids love them. People getting tickets love them. They even have people they give tickets to that want their picture made with them. And so it's our version of Chips. But there are 2
I was just thinking about that.
really, really good men that work really hard. They represented us really professionally. And everybody can't ride a motorcycle, but 80% failure rate for the school of officers that go. It's a very difficult school. But I'm going to tell you starting that unit created organizational pride, because we're doing something that a lot of places don't do, and just to watch how the communities receive them and how kids receive them. They work, not only are they traffic crash specialists, but they also, they work school zones. They do a lot of traffic investigations. They're our experts when it comes to reconstruction, all of our traffic divisions. So that's one component. The other is what we talked about earlier when we're talking about data smart policing, is that, is making sure that we understand what's happening around us, understanding data. We collected a lot of data before, but there wasn't a lot of analysis of what's actually happening. What does it mean? And you can see, so we pay attention to the sheriff's version of that too, because their largest district butts right up to Collierville.
Wow.
And so we pay attention. If they look like if we see trends and hotspots there, you can bet there are going to be a lot more cars that's going to be trying to keep it on that side of the line. So hopefully it's a little bit more of a scientific way to deploy resources, something that it's not just, hey, we do it the same way every night, every time. It depends on the types of crimes that we're experiencing, days of the week, and times of day.
You talked a few minutes ago about the chaplain corps. I think you said the first 9 graduates. How can the public be involved in public safety?
Well, there's the chaplains program is one if you're a clergy member, but we also have a Citizens Police Academy that people can be involved in. We have a volunteer program, citizen volunteer program, that we have a lot of people right now. I think we're at 25. They help us with special events. They do traffic control. They check on elderly patients, shut-ins. They work with the food bank. Which is another element of community policing. And so another way is reporting crime. When you see, in some cases people are reluctant to report, but today we're not only are we technology driven, but many residents are. I mean, how many cameras do we have around town? And so, and a lot of times we solve crime that way when we have auto burglars and people get them on their home video, they share them with us. So just participating and understand that they have a voice. And if they, reaching out to us, I have an open door policy. If I can help, we're going to help.
I know exactly what you're talking about with the community cameras. That's exactly what my son does for the Federal Reserve Board. And it's amazing with those cameras you can see in downtown St. Louis.
Oh, yeah.
It's incredible. What would you say, Chief, would be the greatest leadership lessons that you have learned, not only from the events of last week, but also just as your time as Chief of Police?
Well, I think that I'll go back when I think about the types of leaders that has inspired me the most. It's not one that told me good job on everything that I did. It was one that was balanced, that told me, when I needed tightening up, they tightened me up. When I did a good job, they told me I did a good job. Mm-hmm. They demonstrated care. And for me, I guess the leadership, the biggest leadership thing, the ones that I had the most respect for were the people that modeled what they talked. If you're going to talk the game, you better walk it. And I don't always get that right, but I try. And, and being willing to do what you expect somebody else to do. You're never too good. You never reach a place that you're better than anybody else. And I believe that with everything in me, that everybody has a job to do. I don't care what it is, whether it's the person that's making sure that our building's clean or whether it's our clerks that's giving out reports. Everybody is important and has a job to do.
Chief, since we are filming here inside of this wonderful Collierville High School and this great building, what message would you have for the students at Collierville High School?
I would say be happy, positive problem solvers. You can have a resume, 5-page resume that looks really good, but if you don't have a good attitude, I want somebody that's positive, that's going to come in, that wants to be a difference maker for people. I've often said we can train for skill, but you can't always train for attitude. So I would say be teachable and want to serve, want to help people. That's what we're looking for. And obviously, if you have a dream, go out there and look for those jobs, those dream jobs. What made the people that are there successful? And begin to plan early. Don't do like me and wait till 10 years out of high school. I went to college to play baseball 1 year, and I needed a break, and so I didn't go back for 15 more years after that. So I would say have a plan, be positive, be willing to do. If somebody hires you, don't say it's not my job. Go take care of business if they ask you to do something. Your attitude will push you way faster than your skill.
Yeah, I would only slightly disagree with you because I think you are a great example of someone that can begin to go down one path,
right,
and then even be 9 or 10 years down, and then be willing to do the things necessary, to make the sacrifices, to go back to school, to retrain, to redirect, to refocus, and then really set a path for your own dreams to be achieved. So I would think you're a great example of that.
Well, for me, see, I was in a catch-22. At this point, I had 3 children. My wife and I, we were teaching them, and if you start something, you finish. You don't quit. Well, here's something Dad had hanging out there that I had quit. And so, you can either fix it or you're just, you're kind of fake. And I didn't want to be fake for them. And I think that's something, I never made them play sports or do things, but if you started it, you finished it. And then when it was over, if you didn't want to play next year, then okay. And I've watched how that's helped my kids over the years because they don't quit when it gets hard.
What would you hope to be your legacy?
That I cared. That it's about service. And so, you talked, and I appreciate the compliments on the press conferences. What I wanted people to hear is my heart. I don't, we're right or wrong, I believe what I'm saying. And so I would say that, that I love people, and that's the main thing, and I'm not a preacher, so forgive me, but Mark chapter 12, Lord says, the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. And then he says the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor. It doesn't say love the neighbor that agrees with you, looks like you, talks like you. And so that's what I hope my legacy is, that I meet those 2 requirements. And, because ultimately it's about him, right?
Chief Lane, I want to thank you for joining us here on this very, very special episode of Bull TV. Sharing your story, your leadership philosophies, your passion, and the way that you come about public service. I believe that I speak for all Colliervillians when I say how proud I am of the work of the Collierville Police Department. An important pillar of leadership is service over self. And I believe that you and your team embody that to the core.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you very much for being a part of this show.
It's an honor to serve. Thank you.
20 years ago, America learned a very painful lesson about courage and service when our nation was attacked. We witnessed incredible acts of selfless service by police and firefighters who gave their lives and their courageous efforts to save others during the events of 9/11. As a society, we owe a debt of gratitude that can never be fully repaid to those who've chosen to place their lives in jeopardy by their commitment to service above self. On September 23rd, residents of Collierville saw the same level of service over self by our first responders. These brave men and women risked their lives to save lives of the innocent employees and customers at the Collierville Kroger. Police officers, firefighters, and countless other first responders have redefined courage and service by their unwavering dedication and commitment. I truly believe that we, the people of our great nation, are blessed by these selfless community servants. They are the everyday heroes of our society, whose service keeps us safe and preserves our liberty. As a proud patriot, an even prouder citizen of our nation and of Collierville, I recognize that we live in an increasingly complicated world. Each of us should continue to strive for a nation that protects the rights of every American, whatever may be their race, religion, or socioeconomic status. We have not yet achieved perfection in our society, but our journey remains the relentless pursuit of equity and equality for all Americans. I am proud to be an American and even prouder to live in a society and a community where amazing women and men continue to put their lives in jeopardy to keep us free. We are a nation of laws, enacted by our fellow Americans who accept the challenge of leadership. But we're also a nation where order is preserved by those who willingly accept the challenge of service. I want to offer my heartfelt thanks to each of you for the vital role that you have played and continue to play to keep us safe. Whether you're a police officer, firefighter, first responder, or active or retired military, your selfless service and commitment to our community, state, and nation has left an indelible legacy that's created a debt that we can never fully repay. We honor each of your sacrifices by continuing to strive to create a society that recognizes and respects the value of every life and embraces our responsibilities of citizenship. The American dream lives. Each of us has a responsibility to keep that flame of democracy burning brightly. Our freedom has never been free. It has been earned by the blood and sacrifice of generations of heroes. Today, we stand on the shoulders of giants. We honor their sacrifice to our personal commitment to service for our community, for our state, and our nation. We are Collierville strong. And that is my 2 cents. We invite you to join us next month as we sit down with James Llewellyn, Town Administrator of Collierville. Serving in this role for 26 years, James has overseen an abundance of projects that have grown the town into the wonderful place we all cherish. Don't miss this episode as we discuss James' role, the legacy he leaves behind as he prepares for retirement, and the memories he has made along the way. Until next time, I'm your host, David Pickler. Thank you for watching Bull TV, where together we deliver solutions for a stronger community.